On a dark night in August 1963, a train was quietly speeding along its route, carrying inside one of its carriages more money than most people of that era could ever have dreamed of. By today's value, that sum would add up to roughly £67 million. The driver had no idea anything was wrong. He was simply doing his job like any other night. But he didn't know that hidden in the darkness, a group of men had been waiting for months for exactly this night to arrive. As the train approached a quiet crossing, a red signal light suddenly flared to life, a light that had no business being there. That single moment was when an ordinary night turned into the setup for one of the most audacious robberies in history.
This story sounds like it belongs in a Hollywood script, but it actually happened in real life, and that's exactly what makes it so gripping. A group of criminals planned everything down to the smallest detail and managed to steal millions of pounds from Britain's own government mail train, all without firing a single shot. It all began months earlier, when a handful of well-known London criminals sat down together to plan something bigger than anything they'd attempted before. The mastermind behind this entire operation was a man named Bruce Reynolds, who, along with a small circle of associates, began designing a heist unlike any other. He had access to an incredibly valuable piece of inside.
That secret information revealed that the train traveling from Glasgow to London carried a special carriage known as the High Value Package Coach, or HVP. On a particular day, an unusually large sum of cash would be traveling in that very carriage, and that carriage became their target. Bruce Reynolds and his associates were experienced criminals, but none of them had any real experience robbing trains. So they brought in another London gang, known for exactly that kind of work, a notorious crew called the South Coast Raiders. Slowly, the team grew larger, and eventually, more than 15 people became involved in the plot. Their goal was clear from the start: rob a government train without ever firing a single bullet.
This wasn't some simple smash-and-grab operation where you just stop a train and take the money. It required months of meticulous planning, down to every last detail. On the evening of August 7th, 1963, at around 6:50 p.m., the train departed Glasgow Central Station, bound for London, expected to arrive at Euston Station the following morning around 4 a.m. The train had 12 carriages in total, and 72 postal workers were on board sorting mail throughout the journey. This particular train was specifically designed to drop off parcels and mail at various towns along the route without ever needing to stop completely. Whenever the train approached a station, local postal staff would hang mail bags on a raised rack, and as the train slowed slightly while passing through, workers inside would catch the bags using a net-like arm extended from the carriage.
The carriage meant to be robbed wasn't even attached to the train yet at this point. It sat safely parked at Nan Valley Railway Station. This particular carriage was known as the HVP coach because it typically carried large sums of cash that people sent between cities as money orders. Back in 1960, 3 years before this event, the post office's investigation branch had ordered enhanced security alarm systems to be installed in these HVP carriages. By 1961, 3 carriages had received these alarm systems, while the older carriages without any security features were simply kept in reserve. But on the day of the robbery, by sheer coincidence, every single alarm-equipped HVP carriage happened to be out of service.
As a result, a reserve carriage, one with absolutely no security system installed, had to be used instead.
This was an enormous piece of insider information that the robbers had received from someone deep within Royal Mail's own ranks. When the train arriving from Glasgow reached Nan Valley Station, railway staff connected the HVP carriage directly behind the engine, in second position, and this was the first stroke of luck working in the robbers' favor. But the second piece of information proved even more valuable than the first. Normally, an HVP carriage carried around 300,000 pounds, but because the previous week had been a bank holiday weekend, the carriage that night was carrying closer to 3 million pounds in cash, 12 times the usual amount.
This kind of coincidence probably only happens once in many years. 12 times the usual cash, combined with a broken security system on the very same night. But for the robbers, this wasn't luck at all. They had spent months planning specifically around this exact day. And so the train departed Nan Valley Station with the HVP carriage attached. Night had fully set in, and the 58-year-old driver, Jack Mills, pushed the train steadily toward its destination. Meanwhile, hidden in the bushes near the railway tracks, the entire gang lay in wait, every step of their plan calculated down to the...
At around 3 a.m. on August 8, 1963, one member of the gang began tampering with the signal at Sears Crossing. He slipped a glove over the green light to hide it and used a simple battery to power a fake red light instead. Then, the entire group retreated into hiding and waited for the train to approach. When the train reached the crossing and the driver saw the red signal, he was genuinely puzzled because trains were never normally stopped at this particular crossing, especially not Royal Mail trains. Still, following protocol, Jack Mills applied the brakes and brought the train to a complete stop right at the signal. A strange, heavy silence settled over everything.
Meanwhile, the assistant driver, known as the second man, climbed down to use a trackside telephone to contact the signalman. But when he picked up the receiver, he discovered the line had been deliberately cut, another carefully planned part of the robber's scheme. Just as he turned to head back toward the engine, men emerged from the bushes and seized control of him. Several gang members climbed up both sides of the engine and attempted to subdue the driver. When Jack Mills resisted, one of the robbers struck him across the head with an iron bar, knocking him unconscious right there in the driver's seat.
While this chaos was unfolding inside the engine, other team members were simultaneously uncoupling the first two carriages from the rest of the train. Their plan was to take just this portion of the train somewhere else entirely. But where exactly? About 1 kilometer from Sears Crossing, the retired driver they'd brought along took one look at the controls of this newer engine model and panicked. He had never operated this particular type of engine before in his life. Left with no other option, the gang was forced to revive Jack Mills and force him to drive the short remaining distance himself. And so the engine, along with its two carriages, started moving again, eventually coming to a stop at Bridego Bridge, exactly 1 kilometer away. Throughout all of this, the staff on the remaining carriages left behind had absolutely no idea why the train had stopped or what was happening. Once at Bridego Bridge, the gang broke open the door of the HVP carriage, forced their way inside, roughed up 5 staff members, and tied them face down with rope before beginning their real work.
Inside that HVP carriage sat a total of 128 mailbags stuffed with cash, filled with £1 notes, £5 notes, and 10 shilling notes, weighing in at roughly 2.5 tons combined. The train sat on the bridge,
while a truck waited on the road below. According to their plan, they had only 15 minutes to work with, so they quickly formed a human chain and loaded 120 bags out of the total 128 onto the waiting truck. The remaining 8 bags were left behind simply because time ran out. Their operation had worked flawlessly, but one small mistake was made in those final moments, a mistake that would later prove absolutely crucial in bringing them all down. Before leaving, one of the robbers warned the tied-up staff that if they tried to move for 30 minutes, they would lose their lives. The gang had an Austin Lodestar truck loaded with all the cash, along with 2 Land Rovers deliberately fitted with the same license plate to confuse any witnesses. Once the job was done, they fled the scene entirely. After roughly a 45-minute drive, at around 4:30 in the morning, they arrived at their hideout, located about 43 kilometers away near a village called Oakley. Throughout the drive, they listened in on police radio chatter, which gave them valuable insight into what authorities knew. At the very moment they reached their hideout, police were just becoming aware of the robbery. For the time being, though, the gang was ecstatic. They celebrated wildly at the hideout, even playing a game of Monopoly using the actual stolen banknotes. But their celebration was short-lived, lasting only a matter of minutes. Soon after, they heard over the radio that police were searching a 50-kilometer radius for them. Police had arrived at that 50-kilometer estimate based on the staff member's account, who reported the robbers had threatened them with a 30-minute warning before fleeing, giving investigators a reasonably accurate idea of how far the gang could have traveled in that time.
Hearing this sent the entire gang into a panic. Their original plan had been to leave the hideout on Sunday, but they immediately moved that timeline up to Friday instead. On Thursday, they divided all the stolen money among themselves, a total haul of roughly £2.5 million. According to some reports, each core member received around £150,000, an enormous sum for that era, equivalent to a substantial fortune by today's standards. The remaining money was distributed among various smaller helpers who had played minor roles in the operation. Before leaving the hideout on Friday, they wiped their fingerprints from everything inside and assigned one member the task of burning the entire property down after everyone left to ensure no evidence would remain for police to find.
That particular man took his share of the money, but fled without ever setting the hideout on fire. Meanwhile, police searched extensively across the entire Buckinghamshire area. Helicopters circled overhead, patrol cars raced through every road, and the story exploded across national media. Police announced a £10,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. This prompted a neighbor living near the hideout to come forward, telling police that unusual activity had been noticed there on the morning of August 8th. Acting on this lead, police immediately raided the property, a leather slack farmhouse the gang had rented just 3 months earlier. There, investigators uncovered substantial evidence connected to the robbery: empty mail bags, postal materials, and a truck that had been hastily repainted yellow. The robbers had wiped their fingerprints from most surfaces before leaving, but the Monopoly board still carried fingerprints, left there while they played the game using real stolen banknotes. These fingerprints turned out to be the single biggest breakthrough in the entire case, because nearly every member of the gang already had a prior criminal record on file. Once those fingerprints were matched against Scotland Yard's records, the true identities of the culprits were revealed. Within just a few days, police had arrested 14 out of 16 suspects involved. Only 2 men managed to evade capture entirely: the replacement train driver, whose real identity remains unknown to this day,
and the senior Royal Mail security officer, whose insider tip had made the entire operation possible in the first place. To this day, nobody knows who that officer truly was, since he never revealed his face or his real name. The court declared this the greatest robbery of the century and sentenced nearly every member of the gang to 30 years in prison. Following the incident, Bridego Bridge became informally known as Train Robbers Bridge, a name that has stuck to this very day.
Perhaps the most tragic outcome of all belonged to 58-year-old Jack Mills, the train driver who was struck on the head with an iron bar. He never returned to work as a driver again, and the trauma of that night affected him so deeply that he passed away just 7 years later. This story isn't just about a robbery. It's about human greed, meticulous planning, and the razor-thin line between a flawless plan and a single careless mistake that eventually unravels everything. The greatest robbery of the century may have succeeded on the night it happened,